of Mice and Men by John Steinbeck. Easy English Book Review Introduction of Mice and Men is a famous novella written by John Steinbeck. It was published in 1937 and is set during the Great Depression in the United States. The story follows two workers, George Milton and Lenny Small, who travel together looking for work. They are very different from each other. George is small, intelligent, and careful, while Lenny is physically strong but has the mind of a child. Despite their differences, they are close friends and depend on each other. The story is about friendship, loneliness, dreams, hope, and the difficulties faced by ordinary people. It also shows how difficult life can be for people who have little money and very few choices. Although the story is short, its message is powerful and emotional. The story: George and Lenny are traveling together after leaving a previous job. They are looking for work on a ranch in California. Lenny has a problem. He loves touching soft things, but he does not always understand his own strength. Because he is very strong, he sometimes hurts things without meaning to. George takes care of Lenny and tries to protect him from trouble. The two men have a dream. They want to earn enough money to have their own small piece of land. They imagine having a little house, growing their own food, and living independently. This dream gives them hope. George often tells Lenny about their future home. Lenny especially dreams about taking care of rabbits. Their dream is important because their real lives are difficult. They have little money, no permanent home, and no control over their future. The dream gives them something to believe in. Life on the ranch. George and Lenny find work on a ranch. There they meet several important characters. One of them is Candy, an old ranch worker who has lost one hand. Candy is lonely and worried about his future. When he hears George and Lenny's plan to buy land, he becomes interested and wants to join them. Another important character is Curly, the boss's son. Curly is aggressive and suspicious. He does not like Lenny because Lenny is physically larger than him. Curly's wife is also lonely. She spends much of her time looking for someone to talk to because she feels ignored. There is also Crooks, a black stable worker who lives separately from the other ranch workers because of racism. His situation shows another kind of loneliness and unfairness. Each character has a different problem, but they share one thing: they are lonely. George and Lenny's friendship. The relationship between George and Lenny is the heart of the story. Most workers during the Great Depression travel alone. They work wherever they can find a job and move on when the work ends. George and Lenny are different because they have each other. George sometimes becomes frustrated with Lenny because he causes problems. But George also understands that Lenny cannot always control his actions. Lenny trusts George completely. Their friendship shows how important human connection can be. When life is difficult, having someone who cares about you can make the world feel less lonely. George also benefits from their relationship. Lenny gives him a reason to dream about something better. The dream of a better life. The dream of owning land is one of the most important ideas in the story. For George, Lenny, and Candy, the farm represents freedom. They imagine a place where they will not have to work for someone else. They will have their own food, their own home, and control over their lives. The dream becomes stronger when Candy offers his savings. For a short time, it seems possible. This is one of the most hopeful parts of the story. The characters begin to believe that their difficult lives might finally change. But Steinbeck slowly shows us that dreams can be fragile. Sometimes people work hard and still cannot control what happens to them. Loneliness. Loneliness is one of the strongest themes in Of Mice and Men. Almost every major character experiences it. Candy is old and afraid that he will no longer be useful. Crooks is separated from the other workers because of racism. Curly's wife feels lonely because she has no real companionship. George is afraid of losing Lenny. Lenny depends on George because he does not understand the world well enough to live independently. Through these characters, Steinbeck shows that loneliness is not only about being physically alone. A person can also feel lonely when nobody understands them. Friendship and loyalty. Friendship is another central theme. George could have lived an easier life without Lenny. Lenny's mistakes repeatedly create problems, yet George stays with him. Their relationship shows both the beauty and the difficulty of caring for another person. George's responsibility for Lenny is not always easy. Sometimes he becomes angry and wishes life were simpler, but he continues to protect his friend. Their relationship asks an important question: how far should we go to protect someone we love? The story does not give an easy answer. The tragedy. As the story continues, Lenny's inability to control his strength creates a terrible situation. He becomes frightened and makes a serious mistake. The situation quickly becomes dangerous. George realizes that Lenny will probably be hunted by the other men. At this point, George has to make an extremely painful decision. He remembers the dream they shared and tries to give Lenny comfort during their final moments together. The ending is tragic because the dream of owning land disappears, and George loses the person who has been his closest companion. The story shows how quickly hope can disappear when people have very little power over their circumstances. Famous quotes. Here are several short and memorable lines from the book that can be useful when discussing its themes. Guys like us that work on ranches are the loneliest guys in the world. This quote expresses the loneliness experienced by workers who move from place to place without a permanent home or strong relationships. Another famous line is, "I got you to look after me, and you got me to look after you." This simple sentence describes the relationship between George and Lenny. They need each other. Lenny's dream is also expressed through the repeated idea, "and live off the fat of the land." This represents their hope of living independently on their own land. Another memorable line is, "Tell me about the rabbits, George." For Lenny, the rabbits represent safety, happiness, and the dream of a better life. These short lines are powerful because they connect directly to the story's major themes. What does the title mean? The title of Mice and Men comes from a famous poem by the Scottish poet Robert Burns. The basic idea behind the title is that even when people carefully make plans for their future, those plans can sometimes fail because of unexpected events. This idea fits George and Lenny's story perfectly. They make a plan. They save money. They imagine their future. They believe they are getting closer to their dream. But life takes them in a completely different direction. The title therefore reminds us that human beings cannot always control the future. What can we learn from the book? There are several important lessons in Of Mice and Men. 1. Friendship matters. George and Lenny's friendship shows that having someone who cares about us can make difficult life easier. 2. Dreams. give us hope. Their dream of owning land gives them a reason to continue working. Even when life is difficult, having something to hope for can give people strength. 3. Loneliness can hurt. This story shows how deeply loneliness can affect people. Everyone needs connection, understanding, and companionship. 4. Life is not always fair. Several characters experience problems they cannot control. Poverty, racism, age, disability, and social inequality affect their lives. 5. People are complicated. The characters are not simply good or bad. They have weaknesses, fears, dreams, and regrets. Steinbeck encourages us to understand people instead of judging them too quickly. My review. I think Of Mice and Men is a powerful book because it tells a simple story but explores very deep emotions. The language and story are relatively straightforward, which makes the book interesting for English learners. At the same time, the ideas are mature and thought-provoking. The friendship between George and Lenny is especially memorable. Their dream of having their own home makes the reader hope that they will succeed. The ending, however, is heartbreaking. The book also makes us think about loneliness. Even though the characters live and work together, many of them feel completely alone. For me, one of the strongest messages of the book is that people need hope and companionship. A dream may not always come true, but the dream itself can give someone a reason to keep moving forward. Final thoughts. Of Mice and Men is a short but unforgettable story about two friends trying to build a better future during a difficult period in American history. George and Lenny's journey shows us the importance of friendship, dreams, loyalty, and compassion. It also reminds us that life can be unpredictable. Sometimes people work hard, make plans, and still face events they cannot control. The story is sad, but it is also meaningful. If you are learning English, this book can be especially interesting because its story is easy to understand, while its themes give you many things to think about. The biggest lesson is perhaps this: life can be difficult, but having someone beside you can make the journey less lonely.